And when I think about all the years of what I've learned, you know, I think of a quote that I often hear from Sam. And what he always says is, nothing is inevitable. Right.
When Ginni Rometty became CEO on January 1, 2012, International Business Machines, or IBM, was America's fourth largest company, trailing only Microsoft, Apple, and Exxon. But at the end of 2019, it was the 54th largest company and in crisis. IBM used to be known for its technological wizardry, but today's cool kids are Google, Amazon, Facebook, and basically every tech company except IBM. Younger people today just assume everything IBM does is wrong. For example, Chamath Palihapitiya, a venture capital investor, called IBM's Watson technology a joke in a 2017 interview.
Watson is a joke, just to be completely honest.
Why do you say that? What do you know that you know it's a joke?
The companies that are advancing machine learning and AI don't brand it with some nominally specious name that's named after a Sherlock Holmes character.
Palihapitiya appears preloaded to insult IBM, yet his argument is weak for many reasons, especially considering IBM's robot Watson name actually comes from Thomas Watson, IBM's first CEO. But Palihapitiya's initial reaction to Big Blue speaks volumes to how people view it today. The Big Blue nickname actually comes from its dominance, and because its computers supposedly had a blue tint. Stanley Kubrick honored IBM in his 1968 visual masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey by showing a murderous computer named Hal who wouldn't follow orders from humans.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
But what is Hal? Despite its rich history, IBM stock under Rometty struggled, and it was routinely one of the Dow's worst performing stocks. The Dow is an index comprising what is supposed to be America's 30 most influential companies. On January 30th, 2020, Rometty announced that she was stepping down as IBM CEO, and many are wondering, is the decline all her fault? Could it really be? This video will go through the decline of IBM. Hey guys, if you like this type of video, please hit the like button and subscribe. We run this channel where we have company documentary and educational videos. We also have a website where you can post articles and view stock quotes. To understand IBM's decline, let's travel back in time to January 1993, where its future in the tech industry was being questioned after it reported a $5 billion loss. IBM had frequently been the world's largest company throughout the 1980s, and despite making popular the personal computer or PC in 1981, IBM's management in the 1970s thought mainframes were the future. A mainframe is just a large central computer capable of handling transactions from other computers or punch cards. IBM was caught off guard with the success of the Apple I, which was released in 1976. To protect its mainframe from risk of the PC, in 1981, IBM tried to quickly introduce its own computer. To save time, it hired Bill Gates from Microsoft for an operating system, and it used Intel's microprocessor, as it had not yet developed its own. A microprocessor is a small chip that allowed computers to shrink in size, and IBM even invested $643 million in Intel, or 20% of the company, to ensure it had enough money to make the chips required by IBM. Many people attribute these partnerships with Intel and Microsoft as its biggest mistakes. But if it didn't partner with these two companies, it risked losing the entire PC market. In 1981, IBM was 5 years behind Apple, and it may not have had time to develop everything in-house. In addition, it would still have many chances to win in these markets. Though, partnering with Intel was a strategically worse decision than Microsoft, since software and hardware must be written to work for a certain processor. By using Intel's chip, it allowed Intel to have the dominant processor. In 1983, IBM's partnering strategy was apparently working, and it was the dominant player in the enterprise computer market. But by 1986, its PC sales were slowed by many competitors. This is because IBM was using Intel's chips and Microsoft's operating system. And young kids like Michael Dell figured out how to get IBM's disks to run on their computers. By 21, Dell was selling $60 million of computers. And now you hopefully understand IBM's situation. The market was turning to the PC and not IBM's mainframe, and this would be an era of tremendous competition because IBM's competitors had copied its PC. And now we're back in 1993, where IBM was in a somewhat desperate situation. While many people today, including Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, repeat a myth that IBM was close to bankruptcy, for example, Buffett said in his 2011 annual report after he bought IBM stock, CEO Lou Gerstner and Sam Palmisano did a superb job in moving IBM from near bankruptcy 20 years ago to its prominence today. But at the start of 1993, IBM was actually not close to bankruptcy. It was actually still the largest tech company in the world, and its corporate debt rating was extremely high. IBM was still the champ, but it was now being challenged by many tech companies, including Microsoft and Intel, who are now almost as large as it. John Akers, IBM CEO, had initiated a plan to split IBM into 13 companies called the Baby Blues. But before this plan could be completed, IBM reported this $5 billion loss, and Akers was forced to step down. In early 1993, IBM commenced its search for a new CEO. IBM's board considered merging with General Electric to get the late Jack Welch as CEO. John Sculley, the CEO of Apple, was also considered, and even Bill Gates got a courtesy call. Eventually, IBM settled on Louis V. Gerstner, who is currently running RJR Nabisco, a merged tobacco and food company that had a massive amount of debt due to a leveraged buyout in 1988. With all this debt, Gerstner may have been looking for a way out, or he may have seen IBM as a unique opportunity. On March 26, 1993, Gerstner officially became IBM CEO. While IBM was behind in the PC market, it was still large and powerful. In 1992, its research budget was $6.5 billion compared to Microsoft's $352 million and Intel's $970 million. Its financial situation was not as desperate as it looked, because most of its losses were from restructuring, which often does not affect cash. For example, if IBM built a manufacturing plant for $1 billion, let's say this plant was now worth $0 for whatever reason, then it would report a $1 billion loss. But this loss would not affect cash since the plant was bought in a prior year. And despite large accounting losses, IBM was cash flow positive in 1992 and 1993. In addition, articles at the time indicated that IBM could still restore profitability much faster than people expected. Still, IBM needed a new captain to steer its ship, and how would Gerstner do? To see how he did, we need to evaluate Louis Gerstner in the products IBM was a leader in when he started as CEO. Let's start with its networking division. At one time, Cisco, currently a giant in networking technology, was minuscule compared to Big Blue. IBM invented networking protocols in 1974 with SNA, or System Network Architecture, a method for allowing computers to talk to each other. In 1984, IBM advanced this technology with token rings, a new protocol that more easily allowed machines to pass information to each other through information tokens. By 1991, IBM was the dominant player in networking with $5.2 billion of revenue compared to Cisco's $500 million. Unfortunately for IBM, throughout the 90s, it focused on its own proprietary token ring technology, while Cisco focused on connecting computers through either token rings or Ethernet. Ethernet is a technology similar to token rings, which allows data to pass between computers. IBM made the token rings 5 to 6 times the price of Ethernet. Token rings eventually became like beta tapes compared to VHS tapes. So, while IBM's technology may have been better, its excessive costs led consumers to adopt Ethernet technology, and IBM's networking revenue cratered as we exited the 90s. In 1999, it humiliatingly sold all its patents to Cisco for $300 million. How would IBM do in its microprocessor division? Louis Gerstner and company must have done a better job, right? IBM had the PowerPC processor, which was viewed as technologically superior to Intel's technology. For example, in the 1990s, the PowerPC was used in the most advanced computers, such as the Pathfinder, a robotic spacecraft that landed on Mars in 1997. IBM created the PowerPC alliance with Apple and Motorola in 1991 to combat Intel's 98% market share. However, Gerstner did not capitalize on IBM's advanced technology. In 2003, Steve Jobs proudly announced that IBM's power chip was on its new Mac G5. Showing its importance, Jobs even announced this as part of his iconic One More Thing.
And we are thrilled with this partnership with IBM. It's producing dramatic results that we're announcing here today.
However, IBM was not able to supply Apple with a sufficient quantity of chips. By 2005, Jobs said IBM's processor development was too slow and that Intel was the right company to choose for the future. IBM just lost its biggest customer because it lacked adequate investment, and IBM's power processor was relegated to custom hardware such as the Nintendo GameCube released in 2001. However, later generations of video game consoles, such as the Nintendo Wii or Xbox One, no longer use the power chip. As of 2019, anyone can license IBM's power technology for free. The mainframe environment was difficult in the 90s, and many analysts were predicting the death of the mainframe because they believed smaller computers, often called servers, could do the task of a mainframe sufficiently. In 1991, IBM had $14 billion of mainframe revenue. Despite a slower market, IBM kept its lead with $14.8 billion of revenue in 2003 and a 40% market share. IBM did fine transitioning to a server market under Gerstner, but Gerstner would not have the same success in his PC division. IBM did not have a cohesive PC strategy when it entered the 1990s, and it lost market share. What many people do not know today is IBM was also competing with Microsoft for operating system supremacy. In 1990, Microsoft and IBM were working together on a new system, but IBM split the partnership when it saw Microsoft had its own ambitions. Based on this development, Microsoft eventually released Windows NT 3.1 in July 1993. IBM's operating system, called OS/2, had a low market share, selling only 300,000 copies compared to Microsoft's DOS of 25 million in 1990. But it was described as being superior, and even Bill Gates admitted to being terrified with what IBM would do next. Unfortunately for IBM, Gerstner saw OS/2 as a money loser, and he did not give it sufficient support. He cut investments in software each year. In 1994, he gave OS/2 one more chance with a version called Warp, a name inspired from a popular show at the time, Star Trek: The Next Generation. However, Gerstner then made a horrific decision. He released IBM's PC with a humiliating dual boot option, meaning Microsoft DOS and OS/2 were both installed on the same machine. A journal article said from the time, OS/2 lets you gradually ease into the use of your new operating system by installing a dual boot feature that enables you to restart your PC with DOS if you find OS/2 is taking too long to get used to. By putting Windows on the same computer, he doomed OS/2 for 3 reasons. 1. At the time, computers had limited space and this wasted space. 2. Why would customers support an operating system that IBM didn't even have confidence in? 3. It enraged IBM's programmers and admitted defeat to Microsoft. OS/2 did not get proper funding, and users complained that it took too long to turn on. By 1997, even IBM installed Windows on its internal machines, and by 2006, IBM discontinued all support. OS/2 could have done better if IBM picked either a licensing model like Microsoft, where other PC makers bought its OS for a fee, or a model that Apple uses, where IBM machines had only OS/2 on it. Gerstner picked something in the middle, which completely discredited his PC and operating system. Gerstner had one more software failure. In 1995, IBM purchased Lotus Software, who was famous for its Lotus 123 spreadsheet software. But by 1995, it was rapidly losing market share to Microsoft Excel. Lotus had an ace up its sleeve called Lotus Notes, which was a collaborative program allowing people to work together through email and innovative features such as group work, where 2 or more people could work on a file together. But IBM made some mistakes. It initiated a hostile takeover, which was eventually completed for $3.5 billion in July 1995. To soothe tensions, IBM vested everyone's stock options. But by doing this, there was little financial incentive for Lotus's key employees to stay. And in October, many key executives left, including its CEO. In addition, at the time of the acquisition, Gerstner had not heard of Ray Ozzie, who Bill Gates labeled as one of the top 5 programmers in the universe. Therefore, after the acquisition, he risked losing Lotus's key employee. Fortunately, Ozzie wanted to finish the Lotus Notes project, and he stayed with IBM until 1997. Unfortunately, by 1998, Microsoft had developed a cheaper and better email client that was outselling Lotus Notes. IBM announced the sale of Lotus in December 2018 for $1.8 billion to HCL Technologies, half the price it originally paid for it. Gerstner was more successful in building IBM's middleware software portfolio. Middleware is itself a software that helps different software and hardware link together to complete a task. Its DB2 database software became a market leader. Databases are important and are used in many crucial applications. For example, when you log in to see your banking information, a bank is retrieving your information from a database. IBM maintained its leadership with Gerstner in the database market with approximately $2.4 billion of revenue in Gerstner's final year, or 35% market share compared to 32% of Oracle. Databases are just one type of middleware software we are showing here. Astute viewers may notice DB2's decline on the right. We will get to that. By 1997, middleware was 40% of IBM's software revenue, and IBM marketed itself as a middleware company.
Together, you don't have the people to manage it, so I cloned you.
You did what?
Lifted a DNA sample from your keyboard.
Gil, we're migrating to IBM middleware. Everything's integrated, efficient, flexible, secure. People can be productive again.
Well, what do I do with all the U's?
IBM has continued to be a leader in middleware software. In 2015, it was ranked as having the largest middleware share for the 14th year in a row, with approximately $7 billion of revenue. Gerstner also made an excellent decision to invest $1 billion in Linux in 2000. Linux is an open source operating system, and its investment helped Linux improve, increasing its popularity. This investment in 2000 would become important in 2018, which will soon be discussed. IBM also continued to develop cool technologies such as Deep Blue, which was the first computer to beat a chess grandmaster, Garry Kasparov, in 1997, and IBM continued its artificial intelligence lead with Gerstner. While Gerstner deserves blame for lacking focus in many software and hardware areas, he deserves credit for growing IBM's services business. IBM services team ensures your technology works. In some cases, a company would actually outsource its whole IT department and even computers to IBM, who handles everything inside the company related to its technology. Pre-Gerstner, services were already large at 20% of revenue. When he left, services were 45%. While Gerstner deserves a lot of credit for quickly and profitably growing revenues, the idea to increase services was not innovative from a strategic perspective. An article in 1993 said, IBM will never dominate computers again, but it can become the biggest supplier of computer services. In addition, another 1993 article said, IBM still has a great opportunity as a service provider. Gerstner, who had a consulting background from working at McKinsey, was the right man for the job to grow IBM services. But was he the right man? Well, in 1992, IBM was spending nearly 20 times as much as Microsoft and over 6 times more than Intel on R&D. But when he retired, all the companies spent similar amounts. In his second last year, Gerstner bragged that IBM's expenses had decreased from 44.5% of revenues to 23.6%. But was this really a good thing? On R&D alone, Microsoft was spending 16.4% of revenue in 2001, which neared all of IBM's expenses. Gerstner lacked a clear technological vision and made strange comments, like in his 1998 annual report where he said, "Technology changes much too quickly now for any company to build a sustainable competitive advantage on that basis alone." Clearly, Gerstner was changing IBM's trajectory from a technological giant into a company that would make most of its money from services. We should point out that historians view Gerstner kindly because IBM's stock increased substantially while he was CEO. The stock increased 26.5% on average per year compared to the S&P 500's 10%. The S&P 500 is often referred to as the market and represents what is supposed to be America's 500 largest companies. His stock performance is extremely impressive, but while his large spending cuts would help profitability in the 90s, it would later hurt IBM. Another reason Gerstner is viewed as a success is he controlled the narrative by writing a book soon after he retired, discussing how he got the IBM elephant to dance. Business sites like CNN Money forgot its own 1993 article that the situation was not as dire as it looked when it wrote in 2002, Lou Gerstner seems to have pulled off a miracle. But Gerstner would make one last mistake, choosing Sam Palmisano to be the next CEO. Palmisano simply continued Gerstner's trajectory after he succeeded him on March 1, 2002. 4 months later, IBM purchased PwC's consulting arm for $3.5 billion, which added to its services division. From a financial perspective, this acquisition was highly attractive as PwC Consulting had nearly $7 billion of revenue in 2001, and HP actually had tried to buy it in 2000 for $18 billion. The division would add prestige to IBM services as PwC's team added management consulting options. By 2005, IBM passed the threshold of 50% of revenue coming from services, but a problem emerged. As IT matured, meaning more people were already connected, the industry would have more stable revenue growth, and IBM couldn't expect the double-digit growth that it had under many years with Gerstner. To grow earnings, Palmisano focused on reducing costs. In a leaked 2004 memo, IBM said they could save money hiring Chinese programmers for $12.5 an hour, compared to $56 for a US programmer. IBM was embarrassed by this release and said it lowered the number of planned offshore workers. Mysteriously, offshore workers continued to grow. In 2002, IBM had only 2,400 employees in India. In 2006, 41,000. 2017, over 130,000. No, the I in IBM doesn't stand for India. In comparison, US employees were 140,000 in 1999, 130,000 in 2007, and an estimated 70,000 as of 2020. The issue with outsourcing is the company could lose quality. It could also affect the morale of the US workforce and lower IBM's reputation. The full effects of Palmisano's outsourcing would soon be seen under Rometty. Just like Gerstner, in order to evaluate Palmisano, we have to see how IBM's key product categories did under him. Let's look at software. When Palmisano became CEO, IBM had the largest database product just ahead of Oracle, and it had dominated the database market since the 1990s. But by 2004, IBM moved into second place to Oracle. The total database market was estimated at $15 billion at the time. Articles were predicting a fierce battle for database supremacy, but someone forgot to tell Sam. DB2 lacked marketing spend, and many CEOs and customers thought it was old-fashioned, likely because of its old-fashioned user interface. IBM also neglected the product, and it didn't make a major upgrade for 4 years. Today, the market is over $50 billion and projected to increase to $60 billion by 2022. And Larry Ellison, the colorful founder of Oracle, is dominating the market, and he explains why IBM lost this market.
But again, it's now no longer, it's the tail and the services business is the dog. So we are bigger than IBM was bigger than us in software. We're now a bigger software company than IBM. We beat them in database.
By 2018, virtually no large company ran DB2. Well, maybe one did.
The EU actually did a study. What percentage of the top 100 SAP customers in Europe, how many of them run the Oracle database? Only 99. One actually ran IBM DB2. So we only have 90.
While Lotus was neglected under Gerstner, it collapsed under Palmisano. An article published in 2006 called Survival of the Unfittest essentially explained that everyone hated Lotus. In 2007, IBM gave away Lotus's products for free. As mentioned, Lotus was sold in 2018. Palmisano's biggest mistake was initially missing the cloud computing market. In 2006, Jeff Bezos of Amazon recognized that he could make money allowing people to use Amazon servers when Amazon itself was not using it. At this time, Palmisano was saying, enterprise, implying big business, will have its own unique model. You can't do what we're doing in the cloud. AWS was a big threat that was virtually ignored until Netflix moved off IBM's mainframes to Amazon's cloud in 2010. Suddenly, the word cloud, which appeared only once in IBM's 2008 annual report, was mentioned 39 times in its 2010 report. Today, Amazon dominates the cloud market. On the positive side, IBM continued to invest in artificial intelligence. Palmisano showed off IBM's improved Watson, which won in the popular show Jeopardy in 2011. Jeopardy questions are often difficult to understand for the average person, making this an impressive feat. While Watson has yet to be a resounding commercial success, IBM continues to have a leadership position in artificial intelligence. Sam sold off the ailing PC business to Lenovo in 2004. The PC division had $9 billion of revenue, but lost a small amount of money at this time. The sale of the PC business was right given Gerstner's mismanagement. IBM also continued to dominate the server market under Palmisano. In 2005, IBM had server sales of $17 billion, or 32.9% of the market. By 2011, IBM still had the #1 market share with 38%. While Palmisano was congratulating himself for IBM being a leader in the number of patents it obtained, this was a tradition actually started by Gerstner, who discussed IBM's patent lead in its 1995 annual report. However, despite leading in patents, IBM's research and development lagged compared to other tech giants. When Palmisano started, Microsoft had essentially the same R&D expense. At the end of his tenure, Microsoft's was 50% larger. Palmisano has been heavily criticized by the media for setting two roadmaps for IBM's earnings per share forecast. IBM met his 2010 roadmap where he said IBM would earn $10 in earnings per share by earning $11.67. Palmisano was congratulated at the time for making this target. However, the media currently blames him for setting a 2015 roadmap for $20 a share in earnings and then retiring 16 months later. Palmisano should not be blamed for setting ambitious targets, and many companies issue long-term guidance. Where he can be blamed is if the roadmap led to bad decisions. For example, after the roadmap was announced, IBM drastically increased share buybacks. Buybacks help a company raise earnings per share by lowering the number of shares outstanding. Buybacks are good, but sometimes investing in the future is more important. Palmisano chose buybacks over investing in its future. He capped his final year in 2011 with record revenues and historic operating profit of $21 billion. In addition, he had very respectable stock performance, gaining 6% on average per year compared to only 1% of the S&P 500. Yes, it's hard to remember there was a time that the market returned only 1% over so many years. However, while Palmisano was CEO, the tech industry was rapidly changing. All the tech giants we know and love today were drastically increasing their R&D, and IBM wasn't. When Palmisano retired at the end of 2011, IBM needed a technological visionary to turn around the ship. What it got was Ginni Rometty. To the untrained eye, IBM was doing well when Sam Palmisano retired. IBM was the fourth biggest company in the world, and Ginni was the logical choice for CEO as she orchestrated the deal in 2002 for PwC Consulting. She also had worked with IBM services since 1991. But Ginni's tenure was marked with controversy, and IBM was frequently the worst performing stock on the Dow Jones. To evaluate Ginni, let's see how she did in some key products. IBM's services growth slowed once Rometty took over. One thing that could have led to this decline was Palmisano's relentless pursuit to improve margins. But it appears Rometty also shared this belief as margins increased further. In a 2014 conference call, an analyst asked why IBM was performing so poorly relative to Accenture. IBM CFO at the time, Martin Schroeder, said, "We didn't have the signings performance we wanted," essentially meaning he has no idea. But perhaps this excessive cost cutting eventually led to this revenue decline. With a lack of investment, IBM's share of the database market collapsed. This business was hurt by both Palmisano and Rometty. In cloud software, Rometty didn't invest quickly enough, and in 2013, the CIA accepted Amazon's bid for $600 million for cloud computing services, despite IBM bidding 25% less. Rometty also deserves a lot of blame for the lack of cloud investment because it's not as if she started so late. When she started, Microsoft still had this guy as CEO.
Steve Ballmer! Developers, 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 developers. Yes!
Yet, despite Rometty starting while Steve Ballmer was in charge, it's Microsoft that is in a race with Amazon today for cloud supremacy, not IBM. Rometty has recently increased IBM's investment in the cloud, but IBM still ranks as a niche player compared to the leaders. While Microsoft dramatically increased its capital spend in 2014, IBM did not do so. In fact, it decreased capital spending. Amazon was also spending a lot, which has helped its lead. As of 2020, it has 2 times more regions than the next largest cloud provider. More availability is important as it increases computing capacity, and users can be more confident there will be less outages. We will soon discuss IBM's cloud future. Rometty continued IBM's investment in Watson. However, it overpromised what Watson could do in terms of diagnosing cancer, and in 2017, many of its partners were upset, including MD Anderson, a cancer center whose president resigned after unsuccessfully spending $62 million on Watson technologies. In addition, doctors report that Watson was giving them unsafe recommendations. We will soon discuss Watson's future. IBM's server market share declined. This decline is tough to tell if it's anyone's fault because the market has gotten commoditized and has become less important to IBM over time. Because of this, in 2014, IBM sold its lower-end server business to Lenovo for $2 billion. IBM still does make some hardware though, and it's number one in mainframes, with a staggering 90% market share. However, today's market size is not as big as it was when we started our journey in the 90s. Today's size is only $2 billion compared to $14 billion in 1991. We will give Palmisano and Rometty a pass when it comes to the decline in this division. So, how did she do? Well, a myth was created that Palmisano sandbagged Rometty by making a 2015 roadmap of $20 of earnings per share that she couldn't possibly hit. The fact is, this is her job to set her own vision and targets for IBM, and she deserves 100% of the blame for trying to follow Palmisano's roadmap. In addition, from all her statements, she fully supported this roadmap and she bought back high amounts of stock to achieve these targets. Ginni deserves even more criticism for her relentless earnings focus. For example, she sold the last remnants of IBM's physical semiconductor business on July 1st, 2015. Though IBM still does a lot of research on microprocessors. But the mistake was that IBM actually paid GlobalFoundries $1.5 billion to buy its business. In addition, IBM said it would spend $3 billion on microprocessor research over 5 years, and it would share this research with GlobalFoundries. We can speculate that Rometty may have been motivated to pay GlobalFoundries because of the way IBM reports operating earnings per share, which is a non-GAAP method. GAAP is an acronym that stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Companies have to report GAAP, but they can also show non-GAAP, which is essentially customized accounting. Despite non-GAAP seeming flawed, it is often superior to GAAP as it is less rigid, but it can also lead to manipulation by management, which Rometty appears to have done. Let's show a quick example of what she did. If IBM's processor plant lost $500 million, then it tells shareholders it lost $500 million in both GAAP and non-GAAP. However, if IBM sells this business and pays GlobalFoundries $500 million a year, then it tells shareholders it lost $500 million for GAAP, but its non-GAAP earnings are zero, or $500 million higher, because this loss would now be under this middle column called acquisition-related adjustments. IBM did not spend enough on R&D under Rometty, as its spending declined most years, and its spending by the end of 2019 was far lower than when she started. In addition, Rometty did not invest enough in cloud infrastructure, as IBM's capital spending shrunk under her. Under her, the stock dropped 28% compared to 157% gain by the market. Rometty doesn't deserve all the blame for IBM's decline. She simply wasn't the visionary that IBM needed to turn around the company, and she didn't fix any of the mistakes made by her predecessors. Right now, IBM needs a visionary. Will they get one? On January 30th, 2020, Rometty stepped down as CEO, and she will be succeeded by Arvind Krishna. Arvind is an interesting choice because he has worked for IBM since 1990 in technology roles and not in the services division. He appears to be this visionary. While its last 3 CEOs focused on services, they fortunately still invested some money in artificial intelligence, and eventually Rometty invested in cloud computing. In addition, IBM still has strong cash flows, and its businesses are not necessarily in decline. While revenue was negative in 2019, IBM's decline was in its services division, which we will explain may soon rebound. IBM's other revenues actually grew in 2019, such as transaction processing, where IBM ensures a large volume of transactions for banks or airlines are successfully recorded. In addition, it is still a leading middleware provider, and 85% of Fortune 100 companies use IBM's MQ software, which allows data to be passed between programs. Arvind was chosen to be CEO because he was the architect behind IBM's 2018 acquisition of Red Hat, which was completed completed in July 2019. Unlike the Lotus deal that failed, Red Hat employees have significantly bought in to IBM, including its former CEO, Jim Whitehurst, who is now president of IBM. This deal has the potential to be a large success. If you remember near the start of the video, we credited Louis Gerstner for investing $1 billion in Linux to improve its operating system. This investment helped Linux become the most popular operating system for servers today. Linux is even the most used operating system on Microsoft's cloud platform called Azure. Of the total server market, Linux has a 68% share, and Red Hat has nearly 50% of Linux users, with 32.7%. Despite Linux being free, Red Hat has its own version of Linux, and clients often choose to work with Red Hat as it provides software updates, security, and other services, such as OpenShift, which helps developers more easily scale and deliver their code. This investment in Red Hat also makes IBM the leader in hybrid cloud computing. Hybrid cloud will likely be the future because companies will want to store data on their own internal server and on the cloud. In addition, many companies may want to use various cloud providers, meaning an open system like Red Hat's would be desired. On Amazon Web Service, it is difficult to share information between your local server and the cloud. This is why Antonio Neri, the CEO of Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, calls AWS the Hotel California of clouds, because once you join, you can't leave. While it may seem counterintuitive, IBM believes a customer would more likely use its cloud services if it was easy to leave. Similarly, you are more likely to buy a product if you can return it, which is why an open cloud world will likely be the future. IBM may finally be helped by its large services team, as it can now recommend to its clients a hybrid cloud option and then install its own products, creating synergies. Other tech companies do not have these synergies because they do not have services teams, though Microsoft is trying to build its own. IBM can also pounce on Amazon's disadvantages. Most of Amazon's cloud revenue is from Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. A brief description of the cloud shows why this may be a weakness. Cloud revenue can be put into three categories: IaaS, or essentially using someone else's computer to process your information; Platform as a Service, or PaaS, which is databases and operating systems like Red Hat's Linux; or SaaS, SaaS, Software as a Service, like Office 365. Amazon currently dominates infrastructure, but this is the easiest to commoditize. While IaaS revenue is expected to grow quickly until 2022, it may soon become a low-margin business. This isn't to say building data centers is unimportant. Having more data centers gives Amazon an advantage because if you use their infrastructure, they can sell you their platforms and software. Arvind Krishna therefore needs to increase IBM's investment in data centers. IBM also has exciting prospects in AI. While Watson was overpromised, it is still a leading AI platform with a 9.2% market share, or $2.6 billion of revenue. What should also be encouraging is AI usage is still small, but is expected to grow rapidly from 2.1 billion to 36.1 billion by 2025, an incredible 50.2% compound annual growth rate in only one market, the healthcare AI market. IBM has other advanced technologies and is a leader in quantum computing, which may also prove to be exciting in the future. Following its Red Hat acquisition in 2019, IBM suspended its much criticized share buyback program, distancing itself from the legacy of being so financially minded. And with Arvind, IBM seems once again focused on technology. This may allow it to live out Stanley Kubrick's prediction that IBM will produce the robot of the future. While HAL allowed humans to die in space, we hope Watson lives up to his promise of doing more harm than good for humanity.
The crowd also posted 511 arguments opposing the claim that AI will bring more harm than good. Here is a summary. There are 5 issues that will be elaborated on now. The first will demonstrate how AI will automate repetitive tasks. The next issue will show how AI will create new jobs. Then we will hear about how AI is a technology of the future designed by humans. In addition, we will hear about quality of life and human error.